Now, only last month, the government promised households 2 years' worth of support with their energy bills. But after the Chancellor's U-turn, help for most people will end after 6 months.
Well, as we've been saying this morning, bills are forecast to reach between £4,000 even £5,000 next year. Here to break down what that will mean for you and give you some advice is money-saving expert Martin Lewis, who joins us just ahead of his show returning to ITV tonight at 8 o'clock. And one has to say, Martin, you called this yesterday. You were, I think, the first person to say you thought there was going to be a change in the energy policy.
Well, funnily enough, I'd been sitting at home thinking about these things, which is my job, on Sunday night, and it occurred to me, I remembered Jeremy Hunt had said, you know, everything is under question, effectively. And then I went back to my notes when I sat at the first Energy Summit with the big energy bosses and remembered they'd said their contract was only 3 months long, and that meant that this was open, so this was doable. And one presumes if everything's under question, it's doable, they will do it. I think we need to look at exactly what the situation is. We're currently under the energy price guarantee, which is effectively a cap. It's a cap on the standard charge that people can pay on energy. It was due to last for 2 years. It will now last for 6 months. So it's just like another one of the energy caps, although it isn't as high as it would have been had it been set by Ofgem. In October, it went up around 27% as opposed to the 80% that was planned. Now, if we look at what we assume will happen in April, and we have not had this confirmed yet, but we assume in April we will go back to the old price cap methodology set by Ofgem based on wholesale prices. Now, it's important to state the April price cap is based on prices between the 17th of November and the 17th of February. So we are not in that period yet, which means any forecasts are very, very loose with some crystal ball gazing, although in the past they tend to be roughly in the ballpark but give quite a lot of wriggle room. The current prediction from Cornwall Insights, who I tend to use to do these things, I think they're very good and tend to be pretty accurate on it. Because remember, the Ofgem price cap is based on a published algorithm. Well, we know how they work it out roughly, and we know what data they feed into it. Is that in April, energy bills will rise 73% on average from where we are right now. 73%. Remember, we've already had a 27% rise. That was on top of a 54% rise. To put some numbers on this, I'll talk about the impact for somebody on typical usage. Of course, there is no typical usage. You won't be on this, but it just gives you an idea of the scale of magnitude. About a year and a half ago, if you were on a cheap fix, you were paying £800 a year. If you were on a variable rate, you were paying £1,100 a year. Until October, that had gone up to £1,971 on the cap. It's now at £2,500. From April, we're talking £4,350 on typical use if the prediction is right. It'll stay at that for 3 months, and then it's likely to drop by about 15% to £3,700, and it'll probably stay at that rate roughly for the rest of the year. A lot of crystal balls involved in working out that one. But the big picture you can see is based on current trends, it is likely to be very substantially higher than it is now under the energy price guarantee.
So what do you say, Martin, then, to, let's say, a couple watching this right now, looking at each other in horror and saying, we're going to have to pay that after April? What advice can you begin to give them at this early stage?
I wouldn't give them advice, but I would say the one mitigating factor is we've been told there will be targeted support. Now, in a way, I have some sympathy with what Jeremy Hunt has done. When this plan came in, I have always said I welcome it, but it is a very expensive way to help people on energy, and it's poorly targeted, and it meant people like me who don't need the help got the help just like everybody else. The big question here is how will this targeted help work and how far up the net will it stretch? Now, I would be looking at going back to something like what Rishi Sunak did last May. I suspect that's the template. That's when we got the £400 winter electricity payment. We got the £150 for people with disabilities. There was a 650-odd quid payment for those on benefits and universal credit. And there was a payment for state pensioners too. I suspect we'll see something similar. The really big question about it, though, is how high they'll stretch the net. Now, you see, on that one, there was the £400 universal payment. And when you look at energy bills in the for typical use, £4,300 level.
Oh, no, we can't lose Martin Lewis. We have to protect him at all costs. There we go. Carry on.
You're back.
They are going to need... Hello. They are going to need to stretch the help net up to middle earners. It will not do, and it won't work for them politically, and it won't work for people's pockets if they are only helping those on benefits. They're going to have to stretch it higher up the net, and that is ultimately what we're waiting to hear. There is very little anybody can do personally right now apart from cutting their own usage. We should all be trying to do that if we can, and if it doesn't impact your life, it's a personal question for you. I'm not dictating that, but looking at that both for the environment and for energy security over the winter and for your own bills is useful to do going forward. But ultimately, we're going to have to wait and see what that package, how that package will help.
Do your moles,
and the real worry is that.
Do your moles have any information for you on how long this Treasury-led inquiry into what's going to happen that was announced yesterday? Very quickly, do you know when that might come back, when we might get an answer?
I have not spoken to anybody at the Treasury since this announcement was made. There are busy times. I'm hoping I'll be able to get some contact with them later in the week. To be fair, I get that they're pretty busy. That calling me is not their first point of call on this. Okay. I have to say, the real concern at the moment is for those who are most vulnerable, what help they will get. The new Chancellor has said he cannot confirm, for example, pensions will be uprated with the triple lock, and he cannot confirm that benefits will be uprated with inflation. There are some big questions that still need to be answered.
Certainly are.